So I've set out to build a website template for Showit, and not just any template, mind you. I want to make one that is not only free, but is easy to use and is highly downloaded by Showit users. Unfortunately, there are a lot of really great designs on the Showit marketplace, so my work is cut out for me. This week I've set out to finish the branding for the template that we're creating. And most people, when they think of branding, they think of things like maybe a logo, some font choices, color palette, and those things are important, but branding is much more than just those things.
To get some expert advice, I turned to a brand designer named Derek Kempf. And Derek has worked on some really awesome branding projects and has even done some great work for Showit that you might recognize. So I knew that if anybody could help me with branding, it would be him.
I think we have a little bit of a unique scenario in what we're trying to do, because there's actually, the client is just an idea, it's we're building a template for people who we are hoping this will fit them well. And obviously we've done a little bit of the work of, I actually interviewed somebody who kind of fit the description of the user persona to see what types of things would be good to have on a website for her. Maybe you've never done something like that, but how would you approach that, where you're like, hey, I've got to build a brand for an unnamed person who fits kind of this description?
Yeah, that's kind of perfect, because part of the discovery phase in my process is understanding who this ideal customer, ideal person would be. So some of the work is defining some of these core brand attributes, right? So core brand attributes might be like understanding the mission or the vision, the values of the organization, whatever. And it's a lot like sort of defining the tribe of whatever people you're going to align with. What kind of things do they like? What kind of things do they do? Is there certain places where they typically associate or shop at? Or what are some of the things that they crave? Those are all things that I tend to think about in sort of defining who this persona is, this person. And part of the actual stylescape that I create, the mood board, I like to tie it to that specific person, right? So all of these visual things are kind of meaningless unless this person in this frame, this focal point, gets it, right? Do they get it? Being able to visualize this person, it makes the branding meaningful. It makes it real, because I'm using a specific purpose for whatever it is I'm creating for this person to be able to relate to, or for them to understand or to get it. So different people relate to different things, right? So it's helpful to define that, things like age, demographic, things like that. That begins to narrow down the focus, and it's usually pretty helpful. So
yeah, and to that, something that I've seen you do on a project that we recently worked together on was I've seen you take some of those defining words and just list them on the stylescape. Yep. And I feel like that could be really helpful when it comes to the types of things we're choosing or picking. That's super helpful.
There's definitely word associations that every brand has, right? So what the heck even is a brand, right? It's our own internal perceptions of something. It's what we make up in our mind. It's what we feel. It's how we feel about something. If we can create that, if we can define that and shoot for that, right? So if we can come up with 3 keywords, 3 adjectives, I like to call them brand attributes, but it's these things that we want to associate with the brand. Then it becomes a little bit easier to create anything visual around it. Tone and voice, how does this person talk? How does this person communicate? What kind of things do they talk about? It makes it easier to sort of build stuff around that or talk about it. And that's definitely helpful too, to be able to define those things at some point in the process.
That's great. So let me just kind of recap. So you've chatted with a client, or in our case, you've kind of done some research about who the potential client would be. Mm-hmm. You've created some keywords that kind of describe the feeling that you're hoping to get from the branding that you do for that specific company. You go out, you find some inspiration, you make a stylescape, and then it's just kind of doing the work. So in our case, it would be like finding fonts, it would be choosing color palettes, it would be finding images, maybe even any graphic treatments that we would need to create, stuff like that. Am I missing anything, or is that kind of a good summary?
No, that's a great summary. One thing that I would also add is in that process of sort of defining what those specific elements are, like colors, typography, textures, it's also important to be able to see what's currently being used for similar organizations or people in the market, right? So like, are all the people in this market using purple? We could use the same purple or whatever, or we can see that as an opportunity to segment and to sort of go in a different direction and sort of be an entity of one, right? So like, be unique in that space, like to differentiate. Yeah, understanding at least on a higher level what those things are that can be differentiated is super helpful. And sometimes some businesses, it's important to align with those things, right? So like maybe there are certain elements that you don't want to stray too far away from.
Sure.
I would add that in there too as part of the process of just some level of research in the marketplace to understand. So
sure, yeah, cool. Well, any pitfalls that you could steer me clear of as I'm going through this journey?
Maybe the biggest pitfall is to align too closely with someone else. So as we're talking about like differentiating, it can be easy to look and see what someone else is doing and sort of piggyback off of that. But if we haven't defined that for ourselves, if we haven't identified what makes us unique in terms of the marketplace, then it's kind of meaningless. Like there's not a strategy behind it. So if we can take the extra effort of just understanding who we are for ourselves, what our business does, what we value, what we are excited about, it helps to have a purpose that creates the purpose, the focus. Everyone has their own angle. Everyone has their own direction that they're moving in. And so I would say a good way to avoid any sort of pitfalls is just focus on what I can do, just focus on what I can control for my business, for my organization. And, all these other chips, all these other things related to brand or branding, it will all fall into place as long as I am true to, what it is that I want to be focusing on. Any sort of branding just takes time, like
Sure.
really like to be doing and showing the same thing over and over again, then people will understand, oh, I know who this is, or I know what they're all about. So it's all part of a process, I would say.
Typically, when you think of branding in the context of a website, you're thinking about four main things. You're thinking about typography, which are the types of fonts that you use. You're thinking about color palettes. You're thinking about images, and you're thinking about graphic elements. Things like maybe icons or textures. Logos would certainly be a part of that. So those are the things that we're going to try to tackle here today. And the first thing that I do whenever I start working on branding something is I go find inspiration. And the key to inspiration when it comes to branding is that it shouldn't be an event that happens when you have a need for doing some branding, right? You should kind of be a student of branding all the time. And so I keep a running list of stuff that I've just found on the internet, so that when I have a project that's going to require some branding, I can just go to it and find what I'm looking for. So let me show you what that looks like. It's kind of changed throughout the years, but I have started to just put little clips of things on a notes document, right? I've got websites where we've got different styles, like if I'm looking for a specific type of style, I can go to that folder and see it. I've got stuff that I've seen on websites that I think, oh man, I could probably do this on Showit with a little bit of trickery. So I'm just constantly scouring the internet and then taking screenshots and then trying to organize them. I do this probably about 15 minutes a day, and it's not a chore. It's something that I love doing. And there's a few places that I go to for website inspiration that I think are kind of secret weapons, and I'm going to share with you today so that you can have those secret weapons. The first one is Musical.ly, and Musical.ly is actually a Chrome extension. And so you download this, and every time you open up a new tab, it's going to give you just a whole bunch of design inspiration. Eventually, it'll start to kind of curate the stuff that it's sending you based on what you're interacting with most. So I interact with a ton of websites, and so it gives me websites to go look at. So I'll come through probably about once or twice a day and just kind of scroll through and see like, oh, this is cool. Like, let me take a screenshot, and I'm going to put this probably in the more, illustration category of a website design. So there's a few other places that are good. I've actually written a pretty extensive article on Showit.com that you can go to find a lot of the places that I visit. Another place that I store website inspiration is just on a bookmark. Now, this isn't as good as like going to our notes here and having like individualized folders where I can see different styles, because like this has happened oftentimes where I've been like, oh man, where was that one website where that text was like doing that cool thing? And then I have to open all of these in tabs and kind of filter through. So wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this, but if you're in a pinch and you just kind of need to make it happen, then that's what I would do. So once I've started gathering some inspiration, I actually create a Figma board. I actually just start storing all of this stuff related to branding on this board. So I'll take all of the screenshots that I've taken, or maybe I'll go get some new stuff and I'll just start pasting them in here. And what I've found that I have to do is I have to put little notes as to like why I particularly like this, or else I just open up this Figma board and I'm like, why did I put this here? I don't even know what I was thinking. So I also will add some links so that way I can go and see what it looks like within the context of the website. I do this until I feel like I've got enough inspiration to kind of make like a pretty decent first stab at some of the branding concepts. So after I've gotten all the inspiration stuff squared away, the next thing that I try to tackle are my fonts, so the typography. And the reason why this comes first is because typography is arguably the most important thing on a website. Like, images are important, all of that stuff is important, but text and copy is what convince people to interact or engage with a website. And so if that's the case, then typography needs to have a big place in our branding. And so with Showit, you actually have 4 different sets of typography that you need to be thinking about, because that's what is set up in our design settings. So you've got your title, you've got your heading, your subheading, and your paragraph. So obviously the title are the things that are gonna, divide each section, and then heading and subheading will be divisions of those sections, and then paragraph will be the bulk of the copy. And so with our branding on this, I wanted to go really bold and really big for our titles. And so I'm going to be looking for what's known as display fonts. And display fonts, they have a big impact, right? Like, you can see them from far away. They really make you feel a certain way. So I am going to be using almost exclusively Google fonts on this template, because this is a free template. I don't want anybody to have to go and purchase fonts in order to be able to use this. And thankfully, all Google fonts are loaded right up in Showit that you can just kind of scroll through and have fun with. But that would be pretty tough to kind of determine which fonts we're gonna want to use by just kind of randomly going through and then picking. What I do is I'll just go to Google Fonts and I'll just kind of start filtering through the different things that I've been looking for. So I know I'm gonna want a sans serif, and I know it's going to be display. And then looking at some of the inspiration that we've got, a lot of these fonts are kind of condensed, meaning it looks like somebody came and just kind of squished them together. And so, like, if you see here, like, this is super condensed, this is super condensed, this is super condensed, this is not so much
much, but it's still got a pretty decent amount of personality, like with this little chunk that it's taken out of the K and the R here. They've made some really cool decisions on that. So I really like that. I also like how they've, in some places, mixed some of the sans serif font with some really cool serif fonts that are kind of sharp and edgy. And I think that's gonna kind of fit the brand of who we're kind of going after. We want to appeal to people who are trying to stand out, right? Like social media, all that stuff, you're trying to get people's attention. And so I feel like fonts that really do a good job of that without going overboard, obviously, are going to be really helpful. So I kind of scroll through and see what it is that, I might like. I even put it into the context of the typing. I know like almost all of the inspiration that I've seen has been all caps. And so we will likely look for stuff that looks good all in uppercase. And so I'll just type something like, let's say we make you look good online. Okay, and I know I'm gonna want that to be big, so I'll see how that looks. And so then I'll just start scrolling through and I'll go, all right, this Anton looks great. This Techo looks great. Don't really like these rounded edges. Archivo Black looks awesome. So I'll just open these up in tabs. I'll download them if I don't already have them. And then I'll go to that same Figma file and I'll just start putting typography into the context of what it could potentially look like on the website. So I'll have like a subheader looking next to a display header next to the paragraph text. And so then I just keep doing that until I feel like I've got enough good options to kind of make a decision on what I feel like will work within a little bit of a kind of a quick mock-up. And then that will help me to make a decision. But nothing will help you determine how fonts are going to look until you start putting it on something like a document and just looking at it and going, okay, what does this look like in the real world? Because all fonts by themselves, I feel like could look pretty cool. I mean, there's some not so great ones out there for sure, but until you put it into the context of the type of thing that you're going to brand, you're just kind of guessing. And I've had a ton of projects where I thought a font would look good. I pitched it to the client. They loved it. And then I went and I put it on their website and I was like, this font is not working. And so then I had to go back to the client and I had to say, hey, we need to pick a new font. And so then like that messes up timelines. It can be frustrating to the client. So it's better just to put the work in at this point, even though like this is kind of tedious to copy and paste and change fonts and put fonts into your font library and all that kind of stuff. But it's an important part that you don't want to skip out. All right, so now it's time to look at a color palette. When I first start tackling color palette, I'll go back to my inspiration board and I'll just look at the different colors and try to figure out if there's something that stands out to me. And so one of the things that you can kind of tell from pretty far away if I scroll back is that there's some pretty cool like lime green in here. That for me is definitely gonna be a color that I lean on probably pretty heavily within the website. Maybe not so much as a full lime green background, but I'm definitely gonna go for it. So, and there's a few other colors, like I love this rich purple. I love how this includes some like cool beige, but it's also got some orange, and this even has like a peach color, which is my wife's favorite. But this website was one that I was like, man, I really love this color palette. And I love how at the end, they threw in a curveball with a blue footer. And so what I would do is I would actually come through and I just go and make little bitty squares, right? And then just kind of line them up. And then I'll just go through and kind of, with that selected, just color pick it. And then I can know like, okay, this one is BCC FD8, which if you're a color aficionado, you know exactly what that means. So, but then there's this really cool tool called Coolers. Get that? Coolers, colors. It's pretty clever. I think it costs a little bit of money, but I'm not sure how much it costs. It's pretty non-substantial. But I'll just come through and I'll create a new palette. And then, like I've already done it here, and so I'm not gonna go through all that creation process, but I'll come through and I'll just add all of those colors here. And so from there, Coolors gives you some cool options, right? You can kind of come through and see different palette variation based on shade, saturation, hue, temperature, even when it comes to like if somebody has a particular color blindness, you can see what it would look like to them. You can look at the different gradients and how they would interact with each other. So that's exactly what I did with this color palette. I took a color palette that had inspired me, I entered that, and then I said, okay, let's see if we can make some variations on that. And as you can tell, like the one that I came up with, which is not finalized, has a lot of extra colors in here. So you can come through and say, all right, I like all these colors, so I'm just gonna lock this stuff, but I kind of want to spin the wheel on this other one. And so then you just click shift and then it brings up new colors and you can go, oh, that's a cool one, or not so much. And then you can just go back and forth and until you find some that are really speaking to you. So, and then another thing that you can do is you can visualize colors within context. So if you click that, it'll give you some different designs and how this color palette would look within those designs. And so you can look at different iconography, you can look at posters, some different illustrations. You can even go down to like mobile web and UI, which is what we're looking at to see. So you can kind of see how all of this stuff would work within that color palette context. So it's a really cool tool that is just worth the time and effort. So what I did was I took this color palette and then I just started making variations based on what I thought I would like more. So these colors are probably a little too soft for me. I want to go a little bit heavier shade and a little bit more saturation. So I'm probably going to bring up the saturation. It says that here's the original, right? So let's say we go up, to 30, right? So you click on that and then bang, you've got it right there. And then I'm gonna come in and I want this to be a little bit of a richer purple. So I'm gonna copy this hex code and I'm just gonna put it in right there. And then everything else is looking good. I hardly ever want to have just a straight black. So typically I'll throw in like a little bit warmer of a tone into it or a little bit grayer. And so then I would come back and just kind of put all the colors that I'm thinking I want to experiment with onto these little squares. And so what I would do from here is when I actually go to make like a mock-up of a hero section of a website, which is the very first thing that you see, I would just start messing around with these colors to see like, all right, what's looking good. And this is similar to what Derek was talking about with a stylescape, right? So he creates brands and then we'll just have a whole bunch of different elements kind of on a stylescape that he then presents to a client so that they can see like, hey, here's what this will look like in the context of what we're doing. So for me, it's a little bit more simplified since we're just creating a website. The next thing that we want to try to figure out are our images. And it might not seem like images are a very important thing when it comes to a template because people are just going to be changing them out. But the truth is that when somebody looks at this template, they're going to be asking themselves, can I see myself in it, number one? And does this give me the kind of vibe that I'm hoping to have for my own website? It's going to be really important that we choose images that kind of speak to that idea, to the brand or the persona that we have been kind of defining and going after. And the first thing that I like to do when I am thinking about images is just come up with a shot list, similar to like if I had a photo team that would just buy models and like set up shots and all that kind of stuff, then this is the type of images that I would have. So in my same Figma file, I've got one little section that has images. And so I just go through and think about things that are pretty normal that like folks are probably gonna wanna have. So like shots of their team, people holding phones, this is social media, this is marketing, so it's gonna be important. Another thing that is gonna be important in this is client example mock-ups. So like work that we have done or case studies that we have of our own clients. And so I just went through and just kind of made a list of those photos that I'm looking for. I also went back to my inspiration board and I just started looking at the types of photos that I found there. And so you can see a lot of the things that I wrote down were a lot of the things that I'm seeing here. So particularly on this website, there are just a ton of shots of the team and of the work that they have done. So this is a marketing agency that works with brands. And so they have a lot of the same kind of stuff that I'm going to want to be having on my template. And this is all a portfolio, if you will, of the work that they've done for clients. So I'm gonna need to have a lot of that stuff. They got somebody working on a laptop, they've got like teams working together. Looks like they've got, videos of their teams doing stuff together. But for the most part, it's client work. And so I think I could probably get away, if that's all I had, were just photos of people that look like they're on a team together, and then mock-ups of work that the potential person who's going to use this template has done, so that they can see what their work would look like if it's in this context. One of the places that I love going to for photos, especially because these things need to be royalty free in case they do end up living on somebody's website in the future. So I don't want to like download an image from like a royalty free website that I'm subscribed to. So one place that I like is called Pexels. They've got a lot of really good stuff. It's just a repository of folks who are photographers and videographers coming on and allowing people to use their work royalty free. Another place is something called Unsplash. And so when it comes to photos, this is going to be a lot like design inspiration, right? You don't necessarily want to do this for the first time when you have a project, right? You kind of want to be curating a list of photos that you've just come across that you've liked, and then that way when it's time to find some imagery for a branding project, you've got something that is just ready to go. So on Pexels, you can do that by setting up a free account and then creating categories or collections for different things that you can do. So you can see I've got a lot of different collections here. Like I've got stuff that I've just liked. So here's stuff that I've been on that's just like, oh, that's a cool photo. I should like that so that I have access to that later. And then I have different collections for different things that I've done. So I created a collection for the free template that I'm creating here. So got a lot of really abstract 3D stuff, which I really want to try to integrate into the template. It's got some like different social media 3D stuff. I like the punk rock feel, and I feel like that bold feel is going to be important in this template as well. And so we've got some videos where, there's like TVs going on in the background. So I'm just kind of gathering different ideas. I don't necessarily need to be downloading these, but I'm just kind of pulling them all together so that when it's time to actually go and make the template, I don't have to then go and start searching again. You kind of get the idea. You're pulling different ideas together without having to have a huge download folder. And so you can just kind of see like, all right, something like this would be cool in this section. I've got different photos of a team right here to have an idea of what that might be. And I can come back and kind of add to this thing. This isn't necessarily something that needs to be done right away, finalized right now, but it's something that's important to have top of mind as I'm going through the process and looking at different images. Okay, the last thing that we want to think about before we kind of put some of this stuff together in like a real basic mocked up hero section is our graphic elements. Graphic elements are going to be things like iconography. They're going to be things like textures, maybe some different brushes that we put on top of different things. For instance, at the top of this website here, they have this little brush, which I'm sure is a part of something they did for a client. But this could be something that we could include in the graphic elements of the website. I really like the idea of this free template having some like custom iconography that isn't necessarily native within Showit. And so number one, it's going to allow me to teach you how to do that yourself for your own website. But number two, it's going to allow me to give these icons out to people who are downloading the template. So something to consider with that is that it can't be something that I have gotten from another source, right? So again, this is something that I am giving away. So it has to have originated from me. So I can't go on to like, website where I pay a subscription inspiration, get a whole bunch of icons, and then therefore I can use that in this template. That would be against that license agreement, right? So I need to be able to make up these things, and then in order to offer them to people who are using what I have created. So that's what you can see I've done here. I've just kind of gone through and said like, okay, what are some icons that I would like to use, or are there any in these things that I pulled up as inspiration that are kind of, that I'm seeing over and over again? One of the things that I love are these happy faces that are a lot of fun, because I feel like, you know, happy faces, you can't go wrong with having some kind of happy face. But you also see like a lot of these, I don't know, it's like an internet world globe kind of thing, which I think is pretty cool. You see stars, I've seen a lot of hearts, you see a lot of fun geometric shapes. So I'm just gonna be going through and finding a lot of this stuff, and then also looking for different things. Like I love the idea of having a skull icon. Like nothing says punk rock like a skull icon. And so I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. So I'll just come through and I'll say, okay, what are some really cool skull icons that kind of match the iconography of what I'm working with here? So like this would be one right here. So I'm just gonna copy that, paste it in onto my inspiration board here. So, and then I would go through and I would try to mimic that myself with like a cute little skull icon that people could use. And then boom, we are on our way with graphic elements. So next steps would be taking all of this stuff and putting it into what looks like a mock-up of what we're going for. We're not gonna spend a ton of time here. I just want to see, in the context of what I'm trying to create, does this thing look good? Do all of these elements look good together? And then I can start to fine tune. I don't have to necessarily make decisions right now, because what I have found is that the branding comes out with the more things that you're doing on a project. So you don't necessarily want to say like, this is the direction that we're going. You want to say like, here's the general idea that I have. Let's work out some of these things and we'll make decisions as we go. This is what the process would look like. And I feel like this gets us really close to the way that our template is going to look. So now what's left is just to get some eyeballs on it and see if I can get some good feedback on the direction that I'm heading, and whether or not I keep going this direction or maybe I pivot a little bit.
Hey, James, would you mind coming and taking a look at this? Sure. And then I've got like color palettes, some different inspiration pieces, and some iconography, but I'm going to get your take and see what you thought, if we're heading in the right direction or not. I guess the biggest question would be sort of where's the brand headed, or what sort of is informing kind of some of the design decisions you've made, like type choices, colors. Was there kind of like avatar persona, like, I'm designing this for this person? I know we talked about like social media marketing or something like that. Were there thoughts or kind of anyone that you would pull that was like, this kind of social media marketer, or this share? Because they could go, a marketer could go any kind of direction, but it looks like based on some of the decisions you're making, you're leaning in one direction.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So like we interviewed Sarah Pugh, because she does social media marketing, also has the vibe that I think would be great for kind of this template.
Okay.
And one of the things that came out in the interview that we did with her was the fact that like she loves putting her personality onto the stuff that she does creatively.
Okay.
And so personality, boldness was something that was like really, really standing out to me.
Okay, that makes sense. But I think boldness, it's hard to make bold the brand, just because bold could be taken in any direction.
Sure.
All right, someone could take a serif typeface, and scale it up and be like, oh, that's bold because it's big. But if Sarah represents sort of the kind of marketer that you're sort of targeting with this, I think the thing that I would love to see is more about what makes Sarah bold.
Right. And so then that would be, where does she shop? And maybe it's, if you look at all of the kinds of brands that Sarah gravitates towards, all of them use these kinds of typefaces. Therefore, we thought that that kind of typeface would make sense and resonate with the kind of marketer that's similar to Sarah, almost like creating a lookalike audience.
Sure.
So if Sarah is the sort of ideal client or ideal marketer, then it would be like, oh, well, she loves like oversized clothing. Like that's kind of all the rave right now. And so we want to use type that's oversized because it speaks to that kind of style of person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or even in some of the iconography, I'm not sure if Sarah and skulls would go together.
Sure.
Unless for some reason or something that there's like, oh, well, there's this tie because of some traditional tattoo or something like that. But if that doesn't really match her vibe, then bold again might be too broad. Versus, oh, Sarah, if I were to describe her, I would say she is, this kind of marketer. And maybe in regards to the language we use to describe that style then becomes the thing that informs more of this. Otherwise, we could just find ourselves finding things wherever and being like, oh, okay, this bright color in this skull and this typeface, and it still might not be as cohesive versus making Sarah the ideal person and then basing it off of that.
Yeah. No, that's good insight. I think it's something I need to kind of think through a little bit more specifically. So,
Okay.
appreciate your feedback.
Okay.
James had some really good points that I hadn't really considered. And I think he's right that we need to get a personality feel a little bit better with some of the design work that we're doing. And I was trying to avoid making a full-on designscape, but I think I just need to sit down and spend some time doing it because it will really direct the rest of the design for the template itself. And I think another thing that I've realized is that I've focused a little bit too much on social media managers, and I need to broaden a little bit and have an idea of just a marketing agency. And I know we've talked a lot about user personas and how we need to get really specific, but I think marketing agents in general, or marketing agencies in general, is still a focused enough user persona that we can really target some folks, but it doesn't alienate a ton of other people. So that's another pivot that we're going to kind of do as we're creating this template. But the bottom line is, we've got a deadline approaching and we need to get this thing out the door. The next step in the project is setting up wireframes, which is something I have a lot of experience in. So we're gonna be doing that in the next video and I'm super excited about it.